Hello, folks. Hello. Welcome to the last presentation of MoonCon 2021. I am so glad that you're here, and maybe if you're there when you watch this later, I'm glad that you're there. You could have been doing so many other things with this time, and you chose to be here, so I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. I'm Irisanya Moon. I use she, they pronouns, and I am coming to you from the unceded land of the Wapo, the Southern Pomo, and the Great and Rancheria peoples, which is now known as Santa Rosa, California, United States. I would just launch into a bio about myself, but instead, we're talking about the magic of the heart today. So I'm actually going to start with a personal story. Many years ago, we're not going to say how many, I had moved to California from the Midwest, and I suddenly one day got this really sharp pain in my back. And no matter what I did, no matter how I moved, it just wouldn't let up. It was excruciating. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was having troubles breathing, and it was getting kind of serious, and yet I had no idea what it was. Did I lift something? Did I sleep incorrectly? So my husband really pushed me to go to the ER. And when I got there, they found out that, my heart was racing. I can't remember the numbers because I was a little out of it, but it was pretty high. And I was a bit of a medical mystery. And I was sort of the ER patient, that emergency room, and the patient that all the healthcare professionals were surrounding. Everybody was doing tests and trying different things, and no one could figure out what was going on. And so after many hours and many tests, my heart was still racing, and the only thing they could think to do was to find a way to slow it down. If that makes sense. And so they came to me and they said, okay, so we have a medication that will stop your heart so it will get back in a regular rhythm. And I said, so what does that feel like? And they said, well, it's going to be the worst 7 seconds of your life. Okay. And at that point, they had pushed my husband away from the bed because the resuscitation team had to be closer. And I looked out at him, and he was very scared, also very angry. And I smiled, and I said, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. So they pushed the medication, and I waited. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nothing happened. My heart rate didn't change. Literally nothing happened. I felt fine. I looked around. One of the doctors said, well, I guess we're going to have to do that again. Wait, what? And so they did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nothing happened. My heart was still racing. Nothing had changed. And that was the moment where I started to really think about the magic of the heart, because in that moment, I know not everything's a metaphor, but I was really cognizant of how stubborn my heart was, how much it wanted to keep doing what it wanted to do, how resilient it can be. Now, it's not as simple as that, because hearts have other things going on in them that I am not a doctor. But there was something really important about that moment. And of course, just to let you know, everything turned out fine. Within a year of that happening, I went to my first Reclaiming Witch camp, where I met two beautiful witches who were carrying parasols the whole time, where I learned just how many mosquitoes can bite me in a week, and where I found my magical home, the place that has helped me hold my heart, know my heart, heal my heart, mend it. This community has seen it broken, mangled, and it's also been challenged. So without that one moment, well, many moments, that one night, which, funny enough, was in bulk, I don't know where I'd be today. So again, I am Irisanya Moon. I am a reclaiming witch and a teacher, a Moon Books author, obviously. And I have been practicing some form of witchcraft or paganism for the last 20 years or so, more than 20. Things that might be helpful to know about me if you don't know me is that I am really committed to and interested in the ways in which we hold our hearts. I work a lot with helping folks and helping myself, to be fair, with building resilience and capacity, with honoring grief, with looking at the stories we tell ourselves, and also with devotional practices to various deities. And recently I'm getting more into death work, having taken a death doula class, and a bit more into how we build relationships. And that can be with deities, with elements, with, how we relate to different magical energies. So with all that said, I did say I was a Moon Books author, and I want to show you my books, although I'm going to talk about them more a little bit later because you came from Magic of the Heart, and that's what I want to talk about. So, but I will show you my books if I can get them all in my hand at the same time. No. My first book that came out last June during the pandemic, Reclaiming Witchcraft. My second book that came out in September of 2020, Aphrodite. Don't worry, you'll hear about her today. My third book that came out on my birthday in 2020, Practically Pagan, An Alternative Guide to Health and Well-Being. And this one's a bit longer, meatier, tofuer, if you're vegan. And then my next book that's coming out, the ebook comes out June 25th, and the print book comes out July 1st, unless you pre-ordered, is Iris. So I'm very excited about that. And there's a couple others in the works, so stay tuned. I'll give you contact information and the such later on. So why on earth am I talking about the magic of the heart? A lot of people ask me that besides that story. One of the things that is so amazing about being a human is this heart that we have. This amazing organ, this muscle that continuously pumps blood, which carries oxygen, which carries nutrients, and fills our entire bodies to make sure everything keeps working, to make sure that we can breathe, that we get enough oxygen, that we get enough nourishment, so that we have the energy to do the things that we want to do. And our heart is asking us to pay attention. So actually, for a moment right now, I invite you to just sort of, find your heart, maybe feel it. I think of the heart as the center of magic. I mean, it's a little off to the left, but so maybe just hold your heart in this moment. And just notice where it is. Maybe you can feel the beat. Maybe you recognize a warmth. Maybe it's a little fast. Maybe it's just steady. Maybe it has an extra beat like mine does. And just notice where it is right now, because it's often overlooked. We often, just count on our heart to show up and show up and show up. Might be nice to give it a little attention. But the heart's not just an organ. It is, it's the holder of stories. It is the signaler of moments when we're angry or anxious or sad or happy or scared or worried or impatient. It's the place of knowing. It's the place of connection. And as you feel it in your body, maybe you can start to feel why this is so magical. I mean, what is magic without your life force? What is magic without clarity of mind? What is magic without oxygen to the brain? What is magic without a sign that you're going in the right direction or a direction you might want to reconsider? What is a spell without the rhythm of you? What is an intention if it's not flowing throughout your entire body? Do we want to move to the places we want to move if our heart's not in it? Can we feel the gifts of the world and the joys of the world if we're not attuned to our heart? I mean, what do you think? What does your heart do when I ask those questions, or maybe as other questions arrive in your body? Does it sort of skip? Does it sort of quicken? Maybe you have other questions. I know I do. So my hope today is actually to bring out the magic of the heart as something that can be applied in many traditions or practices and things like that, because it is something that I believe is universal. I mean, you're holding your heart right now, but think of how many other hearts are beating right now. Maybe watching this, maybe not. But all of these lives, all of these possibilities, all of this potential beating right now. So maybe for a moment, we can get to know our heart. Because if there's one thing that I'm working on, is listening to what my heart has to say. Because I don't know about you, but I get confused sometimes. Fear, anxiety is a fast heartbeat, but so is joy and happiness. So there's some signals that I can't always separate or understand. So just for a moment, maybe your hand's still on your heart, or maybe it's not. I just invite you to, close your eyes if that feels good, or maybe just make your lids a little heavy so that your gaze is a little soft. And if you're a person that can visualize things, maybe you visualize the heart that's in you. And if you're a person that is actually better at just sort of being aware, maybe drop that awareness down into your heart. And just be quiet and present for a moment. What does your heart need? What is your heart asking? Does it feel full or empty? Does it feel scared or excited? Does it feel curious or bored? One thing to remember is that the heart, we talk about it pushing out blood, but it's also taking in blood. It's multiple things going on at the same time. So what's going on in your heart? Maybe what are you taking in? What are you pushing out? And no matter if you know more in this moment or you think you know less, maybe give your heart a little bit of gratitude for all of the work that it does every single day, every single moment until it doesn't. And just allow your eyes to open up again. And just trust that whatever came for you was exactly what you needed to hear. Or no. Or maybe you were going to do this again later on. So when I was thinking about how to condense the magic of the heart into a time frame, I decided to separate it into 3 different pieces. And there are plenty more. But for today, I'm going to talk about magic of the heart as related to self, as related to the gods. I will expand on that. And then as related to community. So when I talk about self as part of this whole conversation, and one of the things I want to be clear is that when I'm talking about this, I often will offer more questions than sort of concrete, this is what you do. Because while I feel like I know a lot about my heart, I don't necessarily know everything about yours. And not even necessarily, I don't. And so I don't want to presume to say anything that's not true for you. So that's why I'm going to ask more questions so that you can figure out what's true for you and trust whatever is emerging. So starting off first with self. So self is a part of the magic in which we care for our hearts. Because if we're not caring for them, they're not going to be beating for very long, and they're not going to feel nourished, and they're not going to feel good or feel content or feel resilient or feel ready for whatever the heck happens next. There's actually a few quotes that I'm going to share today because they felt relevant to this work. You say you're depressed. All I see is resilience. You are allowed to feel messed up and inside out. It doesn't mean you're defective. It just means you're human. That's David Mitchell. And these are actually all from David Mitchell, from Cloud Atlas. So let's talk about this. How do you nourish your heart? What are the things that make you feel good? What are the things that make you feel well and healthy? I'm not going to go into foods and diet or anything like that, but think about what does make your body feel good, makes your heart feel supported. Is it moving it? Is it making sure you do something that makes your heart pump a little bit harder sometimes? Is it the rest that you give your heart or not? It's so easy to lose sleep these days. Are you able to give your heart rest and not just the organ? Are you able to give yourself a moment to step back? And one of the things that I think is really important, especially in this often digital space, is what do you expose your heart to? The latest online conversation, argument, gossip? Are you continuously watching the news for the next horrible thing? Are you still following people on social media that make you feel bad, even if they're not trying to? I invite you to think about what you're taking into your heart, what you're surrounding it with, and how little changes might be helpful for it to feel its most alive, its most radiant, its most well. Do you stand up for your heart and for your values? Do you say the thing that you need to say because you need to say it? Do you say the thing that is true for you, even at the cost of any consequence? Or do you hold it in and let it harden and let it fill your experience with resentment? And are you willing in all of those moments that are so overwhelming, that are so big and unexpected, are you willing to let yourself listen to your heart, to the way it feels, to the way it's been impacted, to the way that it's been hurt, to the way that it's been lifted? I heard somewhere that, I don't know which generation, they said their generation, and can't really tell people's ages by them talking. And they said that the generation, whichever one they were in, is the first generation in which folks had feelings about feelings. You know, I think there's this cultural thing where you can't just be sad. You have to feel badly about being sad. You can't be angry because you got to feel bad about that. You can't be happy because, oh, that's a little bit too much. You're not as humble. Can you let your heart, can you care for your heart by allowing yourself to just be angry if you're angry? To just be sad if you're sad? To just be happy if you're happy? To just have joy if you are feeling joyful? To have hope, even when everyone else around you says that is ridiculous? How do you care for your heart? How do you care for yourself? Because yourself supports your heart and your heart supports yourself. And this isn't the watered down version of self-care. This is, how do you nourish your heart so that it becomes a place of compassion? Because the truth of the matter is, we're all going to make mistakes over and over again. We are going to hurt people. We are going to wish we could take back things. But when we're listening to our heart and we're giving it what it needs, we'll know what to do, and we'll know how to hold our hearts when they're a little achy. So I actually invite folks, either now or at a later time, to think about the ways you could care for yourself in the next hour, in the next day, in the next week. And really think about how you could do that, how you can offer that to yourself if you're not already. And if you are already, congratulations, and keep that up. But don't just write down a list. I invite you to do it too. So the second part of Magic of the Heart is the gods. Now, before I begin, I am clear that not everybody works with deities. Not everybody is into that. Some folks are non-deists. Some folks would prefer to work with elements or metaphors or animals or stones. All of that's fantastic. I just want to be clear about that. So while my language is going to be around gods, please feel free to insert your own divine being into that. because I think it still applies. So here's another quote. My life amounts to no more than one drop in a limitless ocean. Yet what is any ocean but a multitude of drops? Again, David Mitchell, Cloud Atlas. So in order to continuously support the magic of the heart, my heart, the hearts around me, one of the things that's important to me is to cultivate relationships. So I cultivate relationships with the divine. So that, I guess the easy answer here is I work with Aphrodite. And it could be any deity, right? Aphrodite, for me at least, she shows up to, in building a relationship with her, I have learned that I can hold my softness and my sharpness and still, support my heart. I can show up authentically and messily and still support my heart. For folks who have not built relationships or always like to learn how to do that a bit more, I do talk about that in my Iris book, because she was the first deity that I really, that I have learned and am continuing to learn to build a relationship with. So there's a whole section about that. While it's in an Iris book, it's good for anything. At least I like to think so. So when we talk about the gods and how to build relationships, I think of this too, is that this isn't just a one-sided thing. It is a reciprocal situation. So, think about the way you build a relationship with anyone. You get to know them. You kind of begin to understand what they're about. I would imagine these days folks do Google folks before they meet them. And so the gods are like that too. The elements like that too. And sort of figuring out what is true for you, what resonates for you, what excites you, what makes you go, I'd like to learn more. Those are all things that I would recommend. Building an altar to deities or essences or energies, fantastic. Or just, I have a friend, this is amazing. She has created playlists on Spotify that are dance mixes for the gods, and uses that to connect it. So it doesn't have to just be scholarly research. But I imagine at this point, you're sort of like, what's the point of this with Magick of the Heart? So here's something that I've recently learned or remembered or whatever in my death doula training. So when someone is dying or someone has died, there's often a concern that if they were angry or in pain during their life, that's going to continue unless it's been perfectly resolved before they die. And one of the things that I learned and have really taken to be true for me at least, is that when we die, we gain a perspective that we just don't have right now. I can't remember everything I've ever done. I don't know the impact of everything I've done. But when I die, all of those little moments and all of those choices add up and make sense. So part of building relationship with gods or anything else in relationship to the heart's magic is that by building these relationships, not only do we learn how to relate more effectively, but we also recognize the perspective of deity, of elements. They're so much bigger, they're so much wider. They're so much more able to see the context that we just can't. And I don't say that in a hierarchical sort of way, but just in a wider way. So when we can connect into something that's bigger than us, or at least more expansive, that allows and encourages you to be more open to different experiences, to different ways of being, actually, I would say to trusting your heart. I think about, working with ancestors or working with my beloved dead. They, through those relationships that I had when they were living and then the relationships after they've died, they're allowing me to see that maybe some of the things that I think are so big and so horrible maybe aren't. Maybe they actually are things that I can use as learning opportunities. Moments where I can expand my awareness and my consciousness. And with that knowledge and consciousness, I have a greater capacity for the stuff that happens, because stuff happens, stuff always happens. So in this moment, I think it would be wise or just suggested to, if there are any deities that are or energies that you might want to work with in building relationships, maybe this is a moment to either, think about them or write them down. Again, if you're watching this later on, you can stop the video, do the thing, and then come back. But begin to think about also the relationships you already have and how those are working for you. Because I don't know about you, but when relationships aren't working for me, my whole life feels a little wonky, and it's hard to tap into what my heart needs because I'm a little off kilter. First, the relationship with me, then the relationship with others, and now moving into community. So one other quote that has stuck with me again and again and again, and I think is sort of the culmination of the energy that I want to bring about this subject. The quote is, "Our lives are not our own. We are bound to others, past and present, and by each crime and every kindness, we birth our future." David Mitchell again. I actually have no idea why his quotes just popped out at me, but they did, and I really love them. So when I move into this space of community and how this is part of the magic of the heart, I am aware that I'm actually really lucky. The reclaiming community is, near to me, local, active, even online during all this pandemic tomfoolery. I've been able to go do rituals online and classes online and, still be connected with folks. But at the same time, I've also watched my beloved community and activists and teachers and other beloveds, just get burned the heck out. I mean, not only is Magick, energy consuming, but also because I believe that witchcraft is often political, that this work of dismantling oppressive structures is hard work and never ending. And I would say too that the work of caring for ourselves in this capitalistic society is exhausting, if not impossible. So where does that leave us? If I'm just one person, what the heck can I do? Well, humans weren't meant to be on their own. They weren't meant to put it all on your shoulders and take it on and do all that. We were supposed to be in community. And so the foundation of all of this heartness is community and connection, because without others, we're missing pieces that we need, because we can't have everything. We can't hold everything. We can't fix everything, because all of us have something to offer. And all of us have something to bring to the space of community, however you define that. So I actually think that one of the things that's been so great about the pandemic, I know I said that, is that this idea of the pods is something that I think really should be carried forward. Who's in our pod? Who are the people that we can count on? Who are the people that share our values? Who are the people that, can help us when we're struggling? If somebody got sick, like someone else would bring groceries, all of that. We need to keep that. to keep that mentality of we don't need to do it all alone. So I invite you in all of this work of your heart to not do it alone. It has taken me a long time to move past my Midwestern, it's okay, everything's fine, it's gonna be fine, right? I don't need anybody, I'll figure this out. But you don't have to. Everyone has something to offer. Everyone, actually, if you today or in this lifetime have never been told that you are a gift and that you are necessary in your community, I am telling you that now. You have something to offer. You have something to bring, and you are vital. Doesn't mean you need to do it all, but all of us have something to offer. Maybe it's resources, maybe it's time, maybe it's you're the best listener, maybe you have the strongest Wi-Fi connection, maybe you have magical practices that you can share with folks. Maybe you can do healings, maybe you can sit at someone's death. And maybe begin either today or in the coming days, begin to think about what you could bring to your community, however you define that. And if you're not sure what that is, online communities work well too, or starting to figure out how you could cultivate that near yourself might be part of this work moving forward. And this is really how you support your heart and support other hearts. We are bound to each other. When we create these groups, I just want you to feel the sensation of that, your shoulders can be lighter. Your burdens can be briefer, because the truth of the matter is that stuff's always going to happen. There's always going to be death. There's always going to be birth. There's always going to be, hopefully, there's always going to be conflict, arguments. Hopefully not war forever, but there will always be confusion. And there's always going to be moments where you feel either too exposed or too isolated. There's always going to be more. So with all of that, you don't have to do any of that alone. You can today, think about what you can bring and how you can support each other and how you can be there for each other. Because while I could tell you about rituals and I could tell you about deities and I can tell you about different sources for learning about Aphrodite, if you need help with your laundry, that is also really important. If you have an ongoing illness, that's also really important to have support. So the magic of the heart is something I can't unpack in a short period of time, but I've just wanted to give you at least a sense of it. And it's really a lot of the work that I do in classes and in my writing, and I imagine future writing. So what I want to sum this up with, at least this part, and then I'm going to chat about other stuff for a second, is that from the self to God's, or however you celebrate divine, to community, there are ways to enter the magic of the heart, the magic of your heart, the magic of this time with more resources, more courage, and more hope. So no matter what is coming, because we don't know, no matter what is on its way, I hope that this magic that you cultivate, this magic that you are, this spell that you are, that you believe, or at least give yourself permission to possibly believe, that your heart will guide the way, that you will know what to do, and that your heart beats at the rhythm of resilience and power. And I thank you for the magic that you are, and the magic that you do, and the magic that's already on its way. Because just as I said in the ER, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. But now, so that's the end of the presentation part. So my backstage folks don't kick me off. If there is any questions, great. I'm happy to answer those. Whilst those are coming, I also wanted to give a little bit more book plugs for folks who might be curious. Yeah, I'm just gonna do that. Okay, so Reclaiming Witchcraft. So if you are interested in reclaiming and you've read Spiral Dance and you've read the Elements book that a bunch of us contributed to, this is a book that talks a little bit about things that you wouldn't necessarily learn unless you were in reclaiming and have taken a lot of classes and are, sort of more involved. So this gives a little bit more. Now, part of it's already out of date, but that's going to get, you'll find out where it's going to show up next. Anyway, also Aphrodite. So Aphrodite, Encountering the Goddess of Love and Beauty and Initiation. This is a book that's super personal to me. And I talk a lot about some personal experiences in here. I will give the short explanation that I was super reticent about working with Aphrodite because while she's great and wonderful, I thought she was sort of floofy and I'm, hardcore. And what she has taught me and what I'm hopeful I brought in this book, and I also teach classes on her, is that one of the challenges of being initiated into love and the mysteries of love is that self-love is really stinking hard. So, but she's super helpful. And if you like all this talk about resilience and things like that, Practically Pagan, An Alternative Guide to Health and Well-Being, which was actually reviewed in Publishers Weekly. I am so proud. So this talks a lot about actual practices, and it's sort of, it's pagan infused. So if you have folks in your life that are like, that witchy stuff is weird, this book is this is more supportive of a wider audience. And it talks about resilience. It talks about how to build your capacity, how to take care of your body, how to learn about your body, how to practice actual nourishing self-care versus what sometimes we're sold. And Iris, which comes out later this month. She's so pretty. I love the cover. Also getting my hair done like this. I'm going to have an online book launch, so you can check it out. And so this book, Iris, my name, Irisanya, is for her. I actually talk about my name in this book, so you can learn the whole story. So this book, I wanted to write this book because there aren't books on Iris yet. I heard that there might be some. So I wanted to write for her because she's so overlooked and she is wonderful. And I have this whole magical practice that takes you along the rainbow. So you can work with, I hold her as a deity of, a messenger of the gods, but also someone who is in service. And so being a priestess and being a teacher, and as an author, I think that I'm in service too. A lot of her energy really resonates for me and continues to do so. So I talked about the things. And if you want to learn more about me, I have a website. It's irisanya.com. I'm also going to have irisanyamoon.com soon. It's actually getting a revamp. So the end of the month, it's going to look different. So excited. If you go to my website, you should be able to sign up for a newsletter that I have for folks who don't want to do the social media thing. I understand, although you might see this on social media. So, but if you know somebody else, but I am on social media. So Irisanya Moon is not a, common name, but I have a personal page on Facebook. I have an author page on Facebook. I also have a Charged by the Goddess. So for my blog, I put my blogs up there first on that Facebook thing. And then I have an Instagram account and I have Twitter, which I'm barely on, but So those are the different places you can find me. Coming up soon, I'm going to have a new longer sort of class with on Aphrodite. I'm in the midst of one right now. I'm going to start another one. And then I'm going to have a class on Iris and actually working through the bits that are in the book. So lots of stuff coming up, and there's a couple books in the hopper too, so stay tuned. Yeah, so are there any questions or anything? Yes, so yeah, I'm finishing out MoonCon, so hopefully this has been empowering and hopefully this has been hopeful. And I just want to say that we've been through a really tough time, folks, and you should be proud of however you've come through it, because if you're watching this, you have, or at least you are well enough to watch this. So may you continue to be well and powerful and magical and trust your heart.